Thank you, and I want to thank the Senate President and the Assembly Speaker for being here at the conclusion of the hearing. I just want to go back to where Senator Weinberg and I started this hearing at 11 a.m. or thereabouts. The document that we voted on today was an interim report prepared by Jenner Block, a factual chronology. Every single statement made in there is supported by either a document or a footnote. What troubles me is 4 no votes at the conclusion of today's hearing to release a factual chronology of where the committee has been and what the committee still needs to do, when we heard no substantive factual criticism of any of the material that's contained in this report. There are 136 pages. There are footnotes, not one single statement that raised any objection to the facts in the report. We did hear one question, if you will, that talked about how the report admits in several places that we don't have enough information to draw a conclusion. We admit that we don't have enough information to draw conclusions in certain aspects, and that the committee still needs to gather more information. That's certainly an accurate read of the facts we've gotten, because we have made a decision to not want to interfere with the U.S. Attorney's investigation. So when we've received requests to not interview people, to not call them before the committee, we've honored those requests. That fact investigation will have to continue at some future date. But right now, this is a summary of where we've been, and in fact, by showing what we don't know, a roadmap of where we need to go. Senator Weinberg?
Thank you very much. I join with my co-chair in pointing out that this was a little bit of a mystifying occasion. We got 4 no votes from the minority members of this select committee without one of them raising any kind of a point of difference about this interim report, about the backup, about the footnotes, about the emails. And I will tell you, I left out of my statement when I read it, but every single statement I made in my opening statement had a page of where it came from in that report. There is nothing in this report other than the testimony that all of us had access to and the documents that all of us had access to. And rather than the minority sitting there making wild accusations about members of our committee, it would have been refreshing had they joined in a bipartisan manner in saying, yes, this is an interim report, it is backed up, and yes, we have not reached any kind of a final conclusion for all the aforementioned reasons. Then we would have had a bipartisan committee. But I am very pleased with the results of this report. It was not written by either Assemblyman Wisniewski or myself or any member of this committee. This was written by the counsel to the committee based upon all of the documents that every single member of this committee has had access to. And if they disagreed with any of those documents or any of the ideas that were expressed by the council, they should have said so.
Questions?
John.
Michael.
How do you respond to Senator O'Toole saying that you essentially prejudged the case and have used these hearings to promote yourself while trying to take down Chris Christie?
Michael, that's been a criticism that the Republicans have trotted out periodically through this entire process, going all the way back to when the Assembly Transportation Committee asked for subpoena power because we were getting stonewalled by the Port Authority. We have to underscore that this started out as an inquiry to the toll increases and the finances and operation of the Port Authority, a toll increase that took effect at 3 a.m. yesterday, matter of fact, 4th of the 5th. And we were not getting answers. A legislative body, a standing reference committee, asking questions and not even being given the courtesy of saying, here's why you can't get it. And so the Assembly at that time voted to give the committee subpoena power. And look at the record. At that time, this is a witch hunt. This is a runaway circus. They use every pejorative that you could find to criticize the work of the committee, long before Bridgegate came up, long before any implication of the governor's office. This committee and its predecessor, Transportation, followed the facts wherever they took us. Unfortunately for this administration, the facts took us right into the governor's office. They may not like those facts, but those are the facts. Senator? Okay.
Senator, could you again discuss the text messages that you alerted us to during this meeting between Regina Egea, allegedly, and Governor Chris Christie? Can you tell us how many there were and how some of them may have been deleted? Could you can you tell us about just those text messages?
There were 12.
The 12 text messages? Well, obviously, since they were deleted, we don't have the content. But we do know the exact time when these texts were being exchanged. And they were absolutely during the testimony of Mr. Durango, Mr. Foy, and Mr. Fulton. And I originally asked that question, I think of Regina Egea, because I had actually seen it in the Gibson-Dunn report. There was a little line in there about the fact that she brought up the issue. I texted the governor to tell him how professional these folks were in their testimony. And when we got the telephone records, it became very clear that, first of all, the governor initiated the text. Second of all, there were 12 in all between the two of them. The governor doesn't recall what was in them. Regina Egea said the one text was not substantive, so she didn't save it. So all we said in this report is that these texts took place, the times they took place, and we don't know what was in them.
I know you can't speak on behalf of the U.S. Attorney's Office, but would they have access as they investigate to deleted text messages? Have you?
I assume the U.S. Attorney has access to everything that goes on in the entire state of New Jersey. But I'm not the techie to answer that question.
Brian.
The issue of this being an interim report, and I know this was brought up near the end, but if you would elaborate on this. If we do indeed go to indictments, and if we then go to trial, as we now anticipate, your report could be sitting on a shelf for another year or more until these people actually go through the trial process, and then what luck would you have in actually getting them to appear before the committee?
Well, let me address that. There are probably more than 6, maybe even as many as 8 individuals that we had wished to call before the committee to get testimony or to have special counsel privately interview. And on all of those, we were asked by the U.S. Attorney's Office to hold off. I can't speak today, Brian, whether or not any or all of them may be on the receiving end of action by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so it's really hard to accurately speculate on what happens in the future when some, perhaps not all, or maybe none, are on the receiving end of an indictment or any official action. I think we have to wait and see what happens. But what's important is there has been a consistent drumbeat, largely by the minority, about what is this committee done, what is the product of this committee, where are we? Because we are on an enforced hiatus because of our respect for the U.S. Attorney's investigation, what we had our counsel do is give us a summary of what we've done so far and what remains unanswered. Now, if indictments come out, there'll be a document that we'll all look at. Some of the answers to those unanswered questions may, in fact, be in that document. We'll have to wait and see.
John?
Yeah, Charlie.
Well, one point that was made was that after it became clear that you were not going to get the central principal figures in this, we're not going to be able to testify and we're not going to cooperate after Judge Jacobson's ruling, that the rest of the the inquiry was essentially a waste of time and that you were dragging minor characters forward without producing any substantive results. Can you list, what would you say to that? And did you find in those final 6 witnesses?
You and I talked about this already.
But would you think that it did advance or illuminate or advance our understanding of this, of what went on in this?
Had we not gone through the process we did, we would not know about the 12 Regina Egea text messages and the deletions, the bilateral deletions of those text messages, which is troubling. Remember, Bridget Kelly asked to have an email deleted, and special counsel opined on that. I'm not sure how this is very different from the actions that Bridget Kelly took. Not only that, we have Kevin O'Dowd on the record, sat right here at the table where Michael's sitting, where we asked about the governor's statement on December 13th. And paraphrasing, I don't have the document in front of me, but Mr. O'Dowd at that time said that the governor's statement at that press conference that neither he nor anyone in his administration knew anything about the lane closures appeared to be inconsistent. The governor was wrong in what he said. And we learned that because of the work of this committee. But your question begs this question, is that if a committee investigates and brings a person in front of it, and that person potentially does not provide anything sensational or noteworthy, or doesn't have the Perry Mason moment that Majority Leader Greenwald talked about, then we look at it in hindsight and say, well, we should have never called that person. Well, of course, that's easy to say in hindsight. But when you see on day one, after Patrick Foy sent his email about the lane closures being reversed, one of the first people in the administration that got a copy of that email was Regina Egea. She was copied on it. So it's an important question to be able to ask her about that. When you see all of the email traffic back and forth with Michael Druniak, who was in part responsible for providing, at a minimum, press advice, it's important to understand what he knew and when he knew it. And so you could go through each of these witnesses. And in hindsight, you could say, well, there wasn't much from that person. There may not have been. But we don't know what they're going to say until we're done. There were a number of people that early on in the process we probably could have called. We decided, for strategic reasons, to wait later on in the process, and they wound up becoming unavailable to us. And so anybody can look at the process and say, well, you should have called so-and-so sooner. Why'd you call this person? They all add it to the body of knowledge. Remember, Christine Renna. I mean, one minority member criticized her testimony because we found out that she shops at some clothing chain because she got coupons in her email. We also found out from her that in her opinion, Bridget Kelly would never have authorized the lane closures without getting authorization from above.
And she was also the one who told us about the deletion.
And also, yes, as Senator Weinberg pointed out, told us about the deletion. So everybody has contributed. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. And part of the problem is, not a problem, but part of the reality is that we've had to withhold our actions out of respect for the U.S. Attorney's process, a process that probably got its impetus from the work that this committee and its predecessors started.
Paul, a lot of Republicans are spinning this in Christie's favor by saying, well, gee, this lends credence to the idea he didn't know about it in advance. Well, what would you say in response?
Well, I find it ironic that all of the Republicans criticized this report. It was cited by nobody less than Randy Mastro, who put out a press statement saying that the Assembly report clears Christie. We say quite clearly in there, we don't have enough information to know what he knew. We know that on December 13th, when he said what he said, that he knew nothing, but that wasn't accurate. We know that he had conversations in Drumthwack at the day before. We know that Kevin O'Dowd talked to him about Bridget Kelly's email. And so we know that there are serious unanswered questions about the veracity of what the governor said when he said it. We know that there's really curious circumstances of two people independently deleting 12 text messages. I mean, I've got text messages on my phone that are years old because I just never get around to it. And I just can't imagine why two people would independently delete 12 text messages. And so they can raise the issues that they want. they didn't raise one factual criticism of the report that Jenner Block put together, because it's all facts, and you can't argue with the facts.
Assemblyman?
Yes.
Everybody can come up with a number of hypothetical scenarios as to how the U.S. Attorney's investigation will play out. But in the end, I keep coming back to the question of, no matter how it plays out there, what could possibly compel Bridget Kelly, David Wildstein, Bill Stepien to come here later on and actually testify?
You know, I think Assemblyman Wisniewski's already answered. We can't conjecture about what's going to happen and what's going to happen with the U.S. Attorney. We will know when we know, and then we will react appropriately. But let me point out that some of the things like no traffic study, a deliberate attempt, this was not a simple communications failure, the way Bill Baroni described it when it came before the Assembly Transportation Committee. That is proven by the documents, the emails. They spent more time on emails deciding whether I would be allowed to speak before a subcommittee of the Port Authority than they spent to trying to find out what actually happened here. So we have all of those documents, which would not have occurred had it not been for the work of this committee and the fact that we had subpoena power, and they finally complied. And let me point out again, just yesterday, the toll increase went into effect, with one more to come next year at this time. A toll increase where the process was questionable. I didn't hear one member of this committee say anything about, gee, maybe the governors should sign the transparency and accountability bills that are sitting on their desks. They're so interested in reform, so that we don't have processes like that in the future where the public is purposely kept out of a discussion about toll increases, about how the money is being used. So none of this would happen. We wouldn't have new leadership at the Port Authority were it not for this committee. All the documents are there. We didn't make up one thing. This is not Alice in Wonderland, although I sometimes feel like I'm the guest of honor at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, and I felt that way today. Every single thing that we said is backed up with a document, with testimony, an email, or a phone message. There is nothing in this report that has been manufactured by anybody. The report stands for itself. And to answer it with a personal attack on members of this committee without discussing what they want to refute, if anything, in the report, was clearly, in my opinion, inappropriate.
I just want to follow up on that question. You know, Senator O'Toole, who's a practicing attorney, spent a lot of time talking about Judge Jacobson's ruling, mischaracterizing it entirely. But the one thing that Judge Jacobson did say is that this committee has the ability to immunize a witness for both testimony and documents. And if we do so, they have no excuse not to appear and provide and cooperate. Now, one of the reasons why we have made the decision to not call people at the request of the U.S. attorneys is exactly that reason. Before they have their opportunity to complete whatever investigative track they're following, we did not want to bring somebody in front of this committee to only have them later on in a law enforcement investigation say, I've been immunized by the Legislative Select Committee. So when they're done and there's a clear path, we can call all of those individuals. They have no excuse at that point in time.
Assemblyman, quick question. In the report, you say, and you said right here, that witness tampering, the state's witness tampering laws potentially may have been broken by Bridget Ann Kelly. As an attorney looking into this, what federal laws could have been broken? Would it be conspiracy, interstate commerce? What would you be looking at?
You know, there have been stories out there that the U.S. Attorney's Office is planning on doing something in the near future. I really can't begin to speculate on how they're approaching this. It seems to me that they've been spending a significant amount of time. The reports that we've heard, largely through media outlets has been that there have been a number of people in front of the grand jury and that the investigative process continues. And so I don't want to speculate on what Mr. Fishman and his office may do. I think whatever actions they take will speak for themselves. But clearly, we are troubled by the inability to get a text message, 12 of them, that were bilaterally deleted by both the governor and by Regina Egea about whatever information she was sending to the governor about the testimony of Patrick Foy, the executive director, Bob Durando, and Cedric Fulton. And if you look at the documents, it is literally an account each time one of the individuals testified. There was traffic to the governor and then a response. And so, maybe they were sharing recipes. Maybe they were commenting about the weather. But over the course of several hours, to have that email chain going on, when they both know at that point in time that the predecessor committee and now this committee was investigating it, is troubling.
Any other questions? Senator Weinberg, if I can ask you, would you be surprised if there are no indictments from the U.S. Attorney?
I've learned a long time ago nothing surprises me in New Jersey politics. So I don't think I'd be surprised about anything. But again, a speculation about this. I mean, if I believe in speculation, I have to listen to your speculation, which doesn't sound like there are no indictments, according to your story. But in any event, whatever happens will happen. And then we will make our next decision. As I say, anytime I think I can't be surprised, I am.
But as you read the report that you released yourself, there are almost, connotations of a conspiracy. When you look at that and you look at the U.S. Attorney's investigation, is it possible that no indictments, isn't it potential, that there's a potential that indictments will be handed?
Anything is possible, and that goes both ways. And we're just going to have to wait and see. Michael, last question.
Senator and Assemblyman, the Port Authority has a new budget, $1 billion for World Trade Center construction, $300 million for path upgrades, more money for the Port Authority bus terminal improvements, and money for 114 new employees. If that reform bill that's on the desk of the two governors were in effect, would the budget be the same? What's your feeling about their new budget?
Well, I will say because of the work we've done, they've started to make some steps by the fact that you have this agenda having been released for a meeting that's going to be held Wednesday morning is something that didn't happen a couple of months ago. So it's because of the new leadership that a few steps forward have been achieved. In terms of the budget itself, I'm going to be there Wednesday morning because, yes, I do have questions about it. So I attribute to the work that we did to the fact of all the Port Authority meetings I attended along at least one of those meetings where Assemblyman Wisniewski came with me, Assemblyman Johnson, the new county executive, Jim Tedesco, came along. We posed all of these questions to the Port Authority, and I got the stock, and you heard it from the testimony, we stuck to the, quote, script, end quote. And the script was, quote, it's all under review, end quote.
What's your top question about the new budget?
I want to find out how it affects the bus terminal, what the timing is, why all the money is, why so much of that money is going to the World Trade Center. Those are I reserve the right to still do some more research tomorrow.
Michael, thank you. Thank you, everybody.